Once you plan it, protect it. Welcome to Retirement Mentorship, your mentor to and through retirement. I'm your host, Ruben Lindy, Certified Financial Planner. Nothing we do in all of the rest of our financial planning can overcome a six-figure setback. No amount of planning or investing can make up for a crisis, whether it be a health crisis, disability, premature death, a home or car destroyed, or a long-term care event. That is why we need to do insurance planning. Not insurance sales, but insurance planning. That's coming up on the Retirement Mentorship podcast. First, the 2-minute tune-in, the primary points of the podcast in the first 2 minutes. This will not be a rehash of Season 2. In Season 2, we covered lots of different types of insurance, including a lot of the myths about permanent life insurance and the other types of insurance that you do and don't need. This is not going to be a rehash of those, where we went more in depth into each of the types of insurance, but rather how to incorporate it in the planning side of your financial plan. We're going to be covering why insurance is next in the financial planning process, why it's important to have a good insurance plan, and what you actually need as a part of your overall financial plan. We'll be looking at some real-world examples of how insurance planning comes into play in the rest of our financial planning, and how it can free up resources and protect the other parts of planning that we are trying to undertake. Some people think insurance is boring, and maybe it is, but it is important, and if it's done right, it can actually be exciting to see the different money we can save and where else we can put that money to use. Insurance is far less boring as part of an overall financial plan than it is sitting in an insurance sales meeting. All that's coming up on the Retirement Mentorship podcast. Creating a financial plan, Step 3, Insurance Planning. We're going to cover in this podcast why insurance planning is next, why it's important, and what you actually need. Let's dive right in. Why is insurance planning Step 3? Let's review where we've been so far. In Step 1, we go net flow. We get organized, find out our net worth, and control our cash flow. After we've done that, we know where we are. We have a good handle on everything we have and what it's worth and where our starting point is. Next was the investing plan. This is a great second step because it helps clarify our purpose, why we're doing financial planning, why we're investing, the other goals we are trying to fund, and it will start working in the background. If we're able to complete our investing plan right away, the investments we already have will start working for us more efficiently in the background as we proceed to the other steps of the financial plan. The other steps in the financial planning process take time and effort. That's not to say that creating an investing plan doesn't take time and effort. If you were to work with a financial planner, though, they would just give it to you right away, and then you can implement it, and it takes all of one meeting. If you're trying to create your own, obviously there are a lot of steps involved in that, which we covered last week. But assuming that your investing plan is established and underway, that can work in the background as we move on to Step 3, insurance. We need insurance because it is important. Doesn't matter how much investing we do if we undergo a crisis. We need that protection. We're planning and protecting everything we are trying to do. Insurance is Step 3 because it must get done. We can't wait any longer than this point to have to do it. If you don't have any insurance, this step probably needs to be done sooner than Step 3. But most people have at least basic insurances in place, and so insurance planning in this step is more about optimizing and perfecting that insurance than it is about getting it in the first place. But if you are vastly underinsured, you cannot wait any longer than this step to get this done. The other reason it's Step 3 is that you should get it done. It must be done, and it should be done. You can uncover potential savings that can be applied to the cash flow recommendations, which we'll get around to at the end of the financial planning process. Many of our other goals are funded by investments, and investments are funded by cash flow. The more free cash flow we have to put towards our current goals and our future goals via investments, the better our financial plan will work. If we are looking for ways to increase our free cash flow, then insurance planning is a great place to start. Many people are either underinsured, in which case this is an important step to get the proper protection that we need for our plan, or are overpaying for the insurances they already have. In some cases, they may even have the wrong insurance. And so it's important to do actual insurance planning, not just buy insurance from the first person that sold it to you or the first commercial you saw during a football game. Insurance planning is step 3 because it must be done and it should be done. Our next point is that insurance planning is important. Here's the deal. Nothing we do in the rest of financial planning can overcome a 6-figure setback. Let's say you have a massive health emergency. You're medevac to a hospital where you undergo days of intensive treatment and then a lengthy rehabilitation and restorative process. All of that costs a ton of money. If you don't have the proper health insurance, no amount of additional Roth investing or tax planning is going to pay for that. You will be paying for that for years, or even worse, starting a Kickstarter campaign to ask other people to pay for it. Newsflash, that's what insurance is. It's a whole bunch of people pooling their money to pay for each other's medical emergencies. Participate on the front end and don't expect other people to help you on the back end because you weren't willing to contribute on the front end. You need the proper health insurance to make sure that if you have a major health event, it's covered and it doesn't bankrupt you. You need income protection. The rest of your financial planning is funded through cash flow and investments. That cash flow dries up, the income side of it, at least, you are screwed. Because guess what? The outflow side of cash flow always continues. You will always have expenses. And the only way those expenses won't bankrupt you is if you always have an income coming in to pay for those. If we get sick or injured and can no longer work for a period of time or possibly forever, how is that income going to still flow? No amount of Roth IRA savings or tax planning or estate planning can overcome you being out of work for months and months or even years without the proper income protection. Most of us don't have enough through work and will want to supplement that elsewhere. Premature death can also set you way back. Most of us who are younger and have kids are depending on the incomes of one or both of the parents to ensure that our financial planning can still work. And we need the proper amount of term life insurance to make sure that that happens if one of us goes prematurely. Your home is one of your larger expenses in life. If something happens to that, are you going to want to fork out the thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for that? Or do you want homeowners insurance? When it comes to your home and car, we almost always have it anyways, but there are ways we can optimize that. And if we are not prepared for the $5,000 a month that a long-term care event will cost, how are we planning to pay for that? Insurance is important. It protects the rest of the planning we are trying to do. We are going to give up a few dollars to protect the hundreds of dollars that we want to go in the right direction. You may have heard it said that you should protect against what can go wrong so that we can focus on what can go right. Now, I don't particularly love this statement because so many people abuse it and use it as a reason to oversell permanent life insurance and some of the other insurances. But it is true. We do want to protect against what can go wrong so that we can focus on what can go right. If we knock out insurance planning in step 3, then we can spend the rest of our time focusing on all the things that can go right. Insurance is important. So what do we actually need in our insurance portfolio? What do we need in our plan? If you want to know more details on the different types of insurances, you can listen to episodes 18, 19, and 20. Those are on life insurance, long-term care, disability, all the different types of insurance that you do and don't need. If you have permanent life insurance still and are thinking of keeping it, you should go back and listen to episodes 14 through 17. Those are all about the different myths on permanent life insurance and why you should have it, and debunking those myths and showing you why you shouldn't have it. We're not going to rehash all of season 2, which was on insurance, but we are going to look at how insurance planning works into the rest of our plan. So let's walk through the different insurances that you need, and we'll look at how they might interplay with the rest of our financial plan. Number 1, health insurance. You need health insurance in your overall plan. And one of the things that we want to do with our planning of health insurance is to consider the all-in annual cost of your health care. Too many people look at either the premiums or the deductibles, and maybe they've had a bad experience with one or the other, and they focus in on just one aspect of their insurance plan options. We don't want to do that. We want to look at the all-in annual cost of our care, not just our insurance. When we focus too much on health insurance and not enough on health care and the rest of our financial plan, that's where we start to make mistakes with our health insurance. Let me clarify this more specifically. Health insurance does not equal health care. Those are not the same things. Health insurance is one way that we pay for our health care, but it may not be the only way or the best way. It might surprise you to hear that in an episode about insurances, but it is an important distinction. We want to focus on the all-in costs of our health care, not just our health insurance. Those costs include not just the money we directly spend on our health care or the money we spend on our health insurance, but also the taxes and other fees that we incur while earning the money to pay for those things. And when we consider all these pieces together in a full financial plan, we can actually find that health insurance is a big opportunity for savings and therefore opportunities to do bigger and better things. Let me show you with a real-world example. I recently, as in the last few weeks, just got some new health insurance options from a client in my financial planning practice who switched jobs. These were sent to me in July of 2021, and I just sent back my recommendations. So here's the scenario. They had two options with this employer plan. One was a high deductible healthcare plan with an HSA, so it's cheaper per month, but then a higher deductible. And the cost of that was $111 per paycheck. The other plan was a copay plan. This has a higher premium of $220 per paycheck, so twice the amount of the first one, but a lower deductible. The HSA plan had a $3,000 deductible, and the copay plan had only a $350 deductible. That was on an individual. For the family, it was $6,000 and $1,250, respectively. When the client sent this over, they were concerned about the higher deductibles. They especially looked at that $6,000 deductible, especially since they are a couple with a couple of kids, and they thought, wow, paying $6,000 before we get any help from our insurance to help pay for health costs seems like a lot. That's a big expense. And so they were leaning towards the copay plan. In their mind, they reasoned, hey, better to pay an extra just $111 per paycheck just to have this kind of done with, right? We levelize the cost, we know what we're paying, then the insurance kicks in after only $350 for the deductible, and we can, live comfortably knowing that we're not going to have a huge health emergency that's going to cost us $6,000 out of pocket. That's the way they were leaning, but they wanted my opinion and feedback before they decided. Thinking about it in terms of an overall financial plan and the insurance planning piece of that, what we look at then is what is the all-in cost. With health insurance, I always look at it in a few different scenarios. First, we want to look at healthy years. What is our all-in health insurance cost in years where we don't really have any health emergencies or health issues? Almost all insurance plans cover preventative care at 100%, so we're not talking about that. We're talking about additional healthcare needs that would cause us to have to go in or get care, and that would cause a medical bill. So what is our cost for health care in a healthy year? And then we look at what about the worst case scenario? What if we have that health emergency with a medevac to a hospital and surgeries and all that? Then what is our all-in cost for that type of year? And then what is our, all-in care cost during a kind of maybe an average year? Some with not with no health care costs, but with just a regular amount. So in this case, we look at what is the all-in cost in a healthy year. Well, the premiums for these plans, for the HSA plan and for the copay plan, are $2,886 per year and $5,772 per year. So with the HSA plan, you will save $2,886 per year in a year where everything is healthy. If you don't have any healthcare costs, you will save $2,886 by using the HSA plan instead of the copay plan. But that's just on the premiums. What if we took those saved premiums and put those into the HSA? Putting money into an HSA gives us a tax advantage. That is all tax deductible. And if it's through a cafeteria plan, as theirs was, you also save on the Medicare and Social Security tax. So the tax savings by putting just the difference in premiums into their HSA for them would generate an extra $1,036 of tax savings. If they were able to fully fund their HSA with other cash flow, then that would save them $2,586 in taxes. Think about that. When you include the tax savings into the premium savings, every single year that this family is healthy, and they usually are, they save $3,900 per year over the copay plan. Now again, they weren't thinking in terms of total financial plan. That's why they've hired me. They were just looking at the premiums and said, yes, we could save some money by doing the HSA plan, but it's only a couple grand, and then we run the risk of having to pay that high deductible. So for them, maybe a couple grand wasn't worth moving the needle. But when you look at the tax savings you get as well, it's almost $4,000 a year in savings by choosing the HSA plan. And if they fully fund the HSA, they save over $5,000 a year total between taxes and premium by choosing the HSA plan. And I believe they'll be able to do that. And that's not just a one-time savings. That's every year, $4,000 to $5,000 every single year saved by doing some insurance planning and looking at the total cost of their health insurance. But what about the years when they're not healthy? What about the years they need care? What about that scary deductible? Is that worth saving extra money if in some years you get wrecked by this high deductible? Well, in their case, if one family member ended up having an emergency and ran up all the costs in order to hit the deductible, their deductible is $3,000 for an individual. So they'd have to pay $3,000 out of pocket before their insurance would kick in. Now in this plan, the max out of pocket, which is the maximum you will have to pay, is also $3,000. So once they hit that $3,000 deductible, they pay nothing else. Now let's just think about this. Their premiums were $2,886. If you add on another $3,000 on top of that, that means the maximum all-in cost for an individual in their plan is $5,886. If you take the $350 deductible of the copay plan and add that onto the premium, the all-in cost for that is $6,122. So it's actually about $300 more expensive if you have to max out your insurance on the copay plan than it is on the HSA plan. So think about this. In a healthy year, this family will save between $4,000 and $5,000 a year being on the HSA plan. And if one person ends up needing a total care, right, medevac, all of that, hundreds of thousands of dollars in healthcare costs, they are only going to pay $5,800 for the entire year, and everything else will be covered. And that is less than the copay plan. So they save $4,000 to $5,000 in a healthy year and still save $300 to $400 in an unhealthy year for one person. That's huge savings. But what about the cases where two family members need full care? Whether on the HSA plan, you need to hit $6,000 in your deductible before your insurance kicks in. That's a huge number for a lot of people. And when you start thinking about that, that kind of gets scary. And you might be thinking, yeah, that actually does make more sense for us to pay the extra $111 per paycheck to not have to incur that $6,000 expense. So let's think about this. Two people in the plan need full care. On the copay plan, again, they're paying $5,772 per year in premiums, and they would need to hit a $1,250 deductible for their insurance to kick in, and that's their max out of pocket. That means the total cost of care for two or more people that have a massive medical emergency in 1 year on the copay plan is $7,022. On the HSA plan, they're paying $2,886 per year in premium and a $6,000 deductible, which means the total cost of the insurance for the HSA plan is $8,886. So in a year when two or more people need full coverage, the HSA plan is $1,800 more per year than the copay plan. But that's just looking at insurance in a vacuum. And we don't look at things in a vacuum in financial planning. We look at it holistically. So if you needed to put $6,000 towards your deductible, that means you could flow all $6,000, probably plus a little bit more, through your HSA to pay for that. Then you're getting all the tax savings. And so you are getting $2,586 in tax savings, meaning that your actual all-in healthcare cost is $6,300 on the HSA plan. You save $700 by being on the HSA plan than on the copay plan. So for this particular health plan, at this particular employer, it actually never makes sense to be on the copay plan. No matter what the scenario is, you always end up saving money on the HSA plan with proper planning and using your HSA. There is never a reason to do the copay plan. This couple will be saving anywhere from $400 to $5,000 per year by being on the HSA plan instead of going onto the copay plan, which they originally intended to do. That's massive savings every single year by doing insurance planning. This is why we do planning. The first item is often skipped over. This health insurance, the thing that you just choose once and then just live with, is actually a huge planning opportunity for many people. This is insurance planning, not insurance sales. Work with a planner, not a salesperson when it comes to your insurance. This one-time decision, saving them money year over year over year, pays for all their financial planning each year and then some. Needless to say, they were very happy with the analysis and chose the HSA plan. It kind of makes me want to go talk to other people in that company and anyone who's on the copay plan to show them the math and why they should never be on that plan. So if you haven't looked at your health insurance recently, this is a good opportunity to look back and see if you can spot planning opportunities to do better. Look at the all-in healthcare cost, not just your premium or your deductible or whatever else, and have a plan to pay for the healthcare when you need it and to utilize your health insurance to help with it. If you don't know how to spot the health insurance opportunities, it's a good incentive to work with someone, again, someone who is very adept at looking at your health insurance and spotting the opportunities. It might pay for the rest of your financial planning altogether. The next insurance that we need is disability income protection. Again, a lot of people have this through their work, but when you think about that, especially if your employer is paying for it, that is taxable. So the actual amount that you will be getting from your disability through work is usually about 50 to 60% of your income, which is usually about 70 to 80% of your take-home pay. So can you swing it without that extra 20% coming home each month? More than that, if you become disabled and can no longer work, you're missing out on the different benefits that your employer provided. So if you get health insurance through your work and you're disabled and you don't have that health insurance anymore, do you still have good options with your spouse's work? Or are you going to have to go in the marketplace and pay a lot more money? More than that, is your employer giving you a match on your retirement? And are you going to be able to not only keep up your household expenses with 80% of your take-home pay, but also keep up your retirement contributions and health benefits and all of those you were getting through your employer? Probably not. It makes sense to fill that gap, to get an additional individual disability income insurance policy to make sure that if you can no longer work, the income is always flowing. I personally have my group insurance through our firm and have a separate individual policy that I pay for to fill that gap, to make sure that not only will my family be taken care of, but also all my goals will still be funded if I can no longer work. It's certainly worth a few extra bucks each month to ensure that my lifetime goals get accomplished. The third insurance that we need is term life insurance. This we covered in depth in episode 19. And I think one thing that I often run across is the notion that this will never happen to me, right? I will never die early. This won't happen, so I don't really need to think about it or spend the time to get it. Or maybe I should get it, but it's like not that big of a deal because let's face it, I'm not going to die early. Wrong. I've had 2 cases already this year of people who have come to us for financial planning because their husbands died prematurely. One in their 40s, one in their 50s. One in their 50s, they're kind of in that gap where the life insurance isn't as necessary. They had a little bit, and that widow is going to be okay because they were in that gap. They had enough other things saved. It would have been a little bit better maybe. They weren't fully financially secure, and so that could have helped a little bit. They weren't fully out of the woods, but she'll be okay. The other one had minor kids still at home, 8 and 10, and they are going to struggle for a while. And eventually, I'm sure things will turn out okay. We're still able to help them quite a bit, but that person was underinsured, and now the family is struggling. 2 times already this year this has happened. And it seems to me that whenever someone does pass away early, especially with kids, that they never have the right amount of term insurance. They just don't. It always happens to the people that don't have term insurance. So one way, I suppose, you could all but guarantee that you won't die early is by actually getting your term insurance, since apparently those people who have it never seem to die early. Of course, ditch the perm. If you have any permanent insurance, get rid of that. Ditch the perm and get the term. This is a huge planning opportunity if you have permanent life insurance. I can't tell you the number of insurance policies that are permanent, cash value, universal life, whole life, whatever, that we have canceled and took that money to do other things. Think of the opportunity cost of continuing to sink money each year into a permanent life insurance policy that has terrible growth and not actually that much life insurance coverage when you could be putting that money towards your HSA, your Roth, or other opportunities. If you have permanent life insurance and you're considering keeping it, send us an email. I would love to talk you out of it. No cost, no obligation. I would just love to have a conversation with you about what you think you are the exception and need to keep your permanent life insurance, and to show you why you don't and everything else that you could be doing with those premiums. So send us an email, questions@retirementorship.com, and I would love to have that conversation with you. The fourth insurance we need is home and auto, and possibly umbrella insurance. Again, we talked about this in episode 20. You will want, of course, guaranteed replacement on your home, at least $250, $500 on your auto, and you will probably want an umbrella insurance. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to know more about what those are. But one of the key aspects here for home and auto is to use a broker. Do not go through a captive agency. Captive agencies are the ones that can only sell their own product. You see a lot of commercials for these on television. If you see commercials for these on television and it's about a family or about getting to a better state or any of those, I'm not going to name specific names, but you know what I'm talking about. If you're seeing commercials for them, those are the captive agencies, and their agents can only sell their own product. They spend a lot of money every year advertising to you, and they can spend that money because their premiums are almost always higher than some of the other companies out there. Your best deal is probably from a company you will not have heard of through commercials and advertising. That's how they're able to keep their premiums lower, because they're not spending millions of dollars on television ads and hiring Aaron Rodgers to represent them. So get a broker. If you don't already have one, go find one in your area. They can save you hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars in your insurance. I've seen it. We've looked at it. We had one person just recently who, when we compared their insurance, got them the right amount of insurance, they actually had a little bit better insurance, a little bit better coverage, and still saved $2,400 every year. Think about that, compounding tax-free in a Roth IRA or HSA over decades, and you can see the impact that planning for this insurance, rather than just going with what the commercial said or what the salesperson sold you, is important. One thing I want to make sure we understand with this is that proper coverage comes first. Proper coverage comes first. You need the full coverage that you need to protect yourself. Then you want to save money. Nothing can protect you from a 6-figure setback if we don't have the right coverage. No amount of saving money on premiums is going to matter if you have a 6-figure setback. So get the proper coverage first, then save money. Again, all else being equal, we want to pay the lowest fees and we want to pay the lowest costs. But everything else has to be equal, meaning we need the right coverage. We see too many people trying to skimp on premiums and they get the lowest possible coverage only to be screwed in the back end when something actually happens. Proper coverage first, then save your money, and home and auto is a great place to do this. And the last place for insurance planning, at least in this episode, is dropping any unnecessary coverage. We covered that in episode 21 in coverages you don't and do need. And so go back and listen to that one. And there's likely some different coverages you may have that you can just drop because they're superfluous. And save a little bit of the money, put it towards something that matters, compound that over a few decades to see the real impact of dropping that pet insurance, and you can see the impact that can be made there. Long-term care is, of course, another insurance that we can look at. That's going to be beyond the scope of this episode, but it is also important. So wrapping up, insurance planning takes work. You actually need to go through and look at all your different coverages. You can reach out to different brokers to make sure that you have the right coverage. Same thing with a home and auto. With disability and term, you want to go through a broker, not through a company that is selling their own product. If the person you were talking to works for the company of the insurance that they're selling, then that is not a broker. That is a captive agency. Same is true for disability, term, home and auto, all of those. You want to go through a broker who then ends up selling you policies from different companies. I personally have never seen it be the case where you should have your disability, your term, your home and auto through the same company. We almost always use different companies for all those. Home and autos will group together, of course, but then we end up using a different company for term and a different company for disability because you want the best companies in all categories, not one company that's going to charge you more in certain categories. So find a broker, get the proper coverage, then save the money, and you could be saving thousands of dollars every year and properly protected by doing some insurance planning. Applying those savings to your investing planning to see the difference. Go plug that right into what you created for your investing plan, and you'll see the impact that insurance planning can then have over decades. I have almost never seen a case in my financial planning practice where people didn't need to make insurance changes, and although it happens a little bit more often that they don't save money, almost always they end up saving money as well through this process. So take the time. If you don't want to take the time, hire someone else to take the time. It will probably be worth it because, at least in my practice, right, we charge people once to do the financial planning process, which includes insurance planning, but then those savings are every single year. And so often the insurance planning will pay for the entire planning process, that savings that first year, and then every year after that, the client gets to reap the benefits. So if you don't have time to look through all these things, or not confident that you'll be able to find the opportunities, just hire someone, get it done, get properly protected, save a boatload of money, apply that to more fun and exciting things, which we'll get to talk about in the next few weeks, and you will be happy you did. That wraps it up for the insurance planning episode of Creating a Financial Plan, and we will see you on Friday for the action items. This podcast is educational only and is not intended to be investment, legal, or tax advice or recommendations, whether direct or incidental. Again, this is not investment advice. Consult your financial, tax, and legal professionals for specific advice related to your specific situation. Never take investment advice from someone who doesn't know you and your specific situation. All opinions expressed in this podcast are the opinions of the speakers expressing them. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Retire Mentorship is not affiliated with or controlled by any registered investment advisor, broker-dealer, or other financial services company.